Let me say that I endorse what Sahotra just said. I, in fact, am notorious, and I've gotten into trouble with my colleagues for saying that in the field of historical biology, by that I mean what my advisor Lee Van Valen called the evolutionary half of biology. Evolutionary theory right now is really the only game in town. If you want to play with ideas of intelligent design, and some of you may, some of you are no doubt skeptical, but if you want to play with these ideas, the route to doing that passes through a thorough education in evolutionary theory first. Because that's the theory that we have. That is the theory, as I said to Sahotra last night, over beer, that has risen to the dignity of error. I couldn't give my talk right now if evolutionary theory had not made very clear predictions about, for instance, the origin of genes, and what to expect in the last universal common ancestor, and so forth. So you need to understand that what I'm doing is not offering an alternative theory to standard evolution. It does not yet exist. What I'm saying is, keep your intellectual freedom, and I'll show you why. I would argue, to continue with my story, and I hope I can get the rest of it in, that top-down and bottom-up approaches do not intersect. What chemicals on their own are capable of doing versus what we know from subtractive analysis of what living things need even to exist leaves a vast complexity gulf that the two spheres do not intersect. For instance, there is no plausible abiotic pathway to RNA. In fact, if I were a designer and I wanted to leave my signature in living things on Earth, I would put at the basis of terrestrial biochemistry, in the heart of every cell that we know, right there in the ribosome, catalytic RNAs that on their own would never survive on the early Earth if they weren't enclosed in a cell membrane. In fact, if they weren't in a cell that was watching out for them. RNA is a very fragile molecule, very hard to make from its constituents. So our tunneling crews are not going to meet. Now, what are we going to do with that? Because that is, in fact, the case right now. Well, now we ask the question, is it possible, simply as a bare possibility, that life did not arise by a natural process only, but was intelligently designed? I would make an a fortiori argument from this kind of signal. This is well, not quite, but almost the simplest free living thing that we know. To be alive at all requires a tremendous amount of molecular hardware. The cell is not what Darwin and Huxley thought it was in the late 19th century. Not even close. Ignore philosophical rules. Now here is where your career can get into real trouble. I'm a crazy philosopher. It doesn't matter what I say, but if you're a scientist and you challenge your colleagues about the rule I'm going to show you, you can imperil your career. So if you're going to play with these ideas, be very wise about who you tell. The rule goes back to the middle of the 19th century, and it's a rule like a rule of baseball. It says, if you're going to put on a lab coat and put your eye to the lens of a microscope or act as a scientist, your toolkit is restricted to natural things and processes. Now, Sahotra, bless him, actually does not accept this. Sahotra's view of this rule is that it is wrong as an a priori dictum. Sahotra holds to naturalism provisionally, which is the same thing to do, and that's why we can have a dialogue about these questions. So unless it's Homo sapiens or a smart animal, intelligent causation is out of the toolkit. That's what you're left with. But what if the world is stranger than that? After all, it's perfectly possible that life was designed by intelligence. Shouldn't we be free to discover that if that's what happened? Never in my career as a philosopher have I heard a reasonable argument defending methodological naturalism if science is defined as an open-ended search for the best explanation. What you get is, well, Paul, we're looking for the best natural explanation. Yeah, but what if it's not true? Well, I'm sorry, that's the game we're playing now. That's the game we played since Darwin. That's not the game of seeking truth. This rule does grave harm to science if science is a truth-seeking enterprise that is open-ended. Because what it tells you, in fact, what it does is it is a lens that interferes between your perception of nature and nature herself, such that even if there were the clearest possible signal there of intelligent design, if you took this rule seriously, you would not see it. I submit that that is the very worst kind of philosophy of science to hold, because it tailors reality before reality has a chance to speak for itself. What's the difference here? The difference is not in the evidence. The protein on the right, actually it's a multi-protein complex, is essential for your biochemistry and the biochemistry of any cell that has it. It's a chaperone, and in that open central space, it allows some large proteins to fold because the interior cells is very crowded. Right now, March 2006, in an aqueous environment, a protein wants to come apart. The amino acids want to come apart. Proteins do not fold naturally under any conditions that we know. Why can't we infer design for the object on the right, and we would all infer it for the pattern on the left, which is much simpler? I'll tell you, it has nothing to do with the evidence. It has everything to do with that rule. And if that rule of methodological naturalism is what's keeping you from inferring design, then that's a rule that you need to break, although you need to do so very, very carefully. This is the main rule, and this is how I want to end my remarks. I said a moment ago that if you're going to play with intelligent design, you need to get to that point by learning as much evolutionary biology as you can stand, and I really believe that. That's what I did in my own academic career. Furthermore, you need to work close by with people who disagree with you, because we are looking at the same world. The fastest way to find out if your ideas are wrong is to work with someone who disagrees with you, which is why I love Bill and Sahotra, because they disagree with me. And the healthy posture in science is not to be sure that you're right, it's to find people who will tell you when you're wrong. And that dialectical model of discourse is the way that we should go. Let me end by endorsing what Sahotra said. If intelligent design is going to rise to the status of a fully fledged theory, it needs to do what he said. And it hasn't yet done that. What I'm suggesting is that there may be signals from biology that ought to tempt your curiosity, but Sahotra's right. If these ideas are going to ever find their way into the classroom, which is not something, frankly, I care that much about, but if they ever find their way there, it will be by the ordinary path that every other scientific idea does, which is by persuading the scientific community. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, at this point, Dr. Wimsatt will provide commentary on the discussion that's gone on so far. I have about 15 minutes, and we're going to wait until he's able to set up his presentation.